James stood staring in amazement at the thing standing in front of him. The form of a newly dead person grinned at him from just a few feet away. Its formerly light brown skin pitted here and there with recent signs of decay. Skin was slowly peeling off the fine narrow nose, all sign of the familiar freckles that had dotted its surface gone. The corpse's lips were loose and peeling. The smile it gave him caused them to flop downward, hiding teeth that he was sure he didn't want to see anyway. Parts of the scalp were visible because the hair had come off in tufts, littering the dead guy's shoulders, which were visible underneath the torn fabric of his shirt. He could see strips of skin flaking off underneath the material. A few pieces had fallen down the arm and hung below the level of the sleeve, reminding him of a snake shedding its skin. The young man he was facing had only been dead a couple of days at the most, but his body was falling apart pretty fast and it hurt to see it this way. How did he know how long this guy had been dead? Well, he was pretty sure that he recognized his own body as it stared back at him. He knew that the spirits in this place had been using human bodies as their vessels. It seemed to make their movement through the portals easier. But he had no idea how they would have found his. Well, truth be told, he had no idea where he left his body after he died. But how in the world was it possible for his corpse to be holding the hand of Diandra's dead body? They had not been anywhere near each other in life. From what she had told him, she was in an entirely different world than his when she died. While looking at his own body used as a dead meat puppet was painful enough, the fact that it held the hand of his new girlfriend was even worse. Especially since her body was torn to pieces. The only way he recognized her was by the one side of her face that remained intact. The rest of her was so badly damaged, having been ravaged by something that obviously had a deep hatred for the young woman. Diandra's body was torn and smashed, with bones protruding at angles they hadn't been designed to go in. And yet, she stood at his side, a smile fixed on the part of her face that was still in one piece. Behind her stood his entire adopted family, their bodies all lined up, his sisters, brothers and parents. It was as if the evil things had seen everything he cared about, everyone he loved, and was using them against him like pawns on a chessboard. The shadowy wraiths that ran the show here somehow knew the people he loved were keeping him going even after death. The hope that what he was doing here would keep them alive was what kept him from giving up. James was sure his loved ones were going to survive him, and if he could get through all this somehow he could return to them and everything would be okay again. Now he was seeing them all dead and inhabited by enemies urging him to give up and surrender his soul because they had already won this game. A strangled cry came out of his mouth as he faced the gathering of his dead loved ones now moving slowly toward them. They had noticed his weakening concentration. Distress at seeing his loved ones' bodies used as vehicles for evil spirits made his knees buckle and his stomach turn. Sweat rolled down his face as the determined enemy moved closer and closer to Sara, casually passing by James, who stood with his hands on his face while Diandra tried to get him to regain focus and push them back. "James, look at me!" she yelled at him, pulling at his hands until they stood face to face. A quick look back at Sara showed her that the dead things were moving much closer to the woman, so locked up in the pull of the thing she sought, she no longer paid any attention to the dangers around her. Thomas was caught up with her, unable to pull away from the connection that bound them so tightly together at the moment. He had gone far into her head in order to understand why she wasn't able to break the chain that bound her to the thing and was trapped there with her. The object pulled persistently at her until it was all they could see. James had hoped to keep the enemy back until whatever was happening to the two of them stopped, or they found the thing, whichever came first. But now, that too was failing with the enemy's new effective tactic. Diandra closed her eyes, gritted her teeth, and tried to come up with something that would help her to help him. Stupid visions had haunted her all of her life, never coming to her when she wanted them to, and always getting her in trouble with the people around her. She had suffered with this most of her life, and now that she was dead, the least she could expect from this curse was for it to work for her when she needed it the most. A brief flash of light followed by a popping noise was all she got for her trouble. She opened her eyes once again to find that the dead things had reached Sara and Thomas and were reaching out for them. "Come on!" she screamed in her head, looking for anything she could use from there. The scene in front of her swam in and out of focus, and she got her wish. One vision that both made her want to shout for joy and cry at the same time. This vision was clear enough to make her sure of what she needed to do next. "James, open your eyes," she said, pulling his hands away from his face. This strong man had almost been broken by the loss of all that he loved. She needed to let him know that it was all a lie. "Look carefully at these things in front of you," she spoke softly, trying to hide the tremor in her voice as she glanced back once again to see that the dead things were trying to pull the light that was the soul from Sara and Thomas. Rotting fingers made contact with the flesh of the keepers, digging inward as they sought the golden brightness that was the essence of Iam's special creations. James responded by shaking his head and staring into her eyes. "I can't see my family like that, can't see you like that," he whispered. "Even if we succeed in finding the thing to destroy Brachus, what's left? I'm already dead, so are you and so are they." "No, James, look at them," she said sternly, forcing his head in the direction of the things that surrounded his circle members. She didn't want to tell him everything that she had seen now, but would have to tell him eventually. It was more important to give him hope that they could make a difference, because that's what would get him through this. His friends needed him. James turned toward the ugliness that was left of Diandra and his entire family. Heart in his throat, he opened his eyes to see what she wanted him to see. Trusting her but resenting that she was insisting so strongly that he look at this awful sight. He looked at the collection of dead things surrounding his circle members, at first seeing just what he had before. The bodies of his family and Diandra digging their fingers into Sara and Thomas, seeking to remove their souls. He blinked his eye, trying to come to grips with what he was seeing and what he would have to do to them in order to protect his friends. Pushing his anguish down, as Diandra said, "Don't just look at them, James, see them." She repeated over and over until he wanted to scream at her, to just shut up. but her tone was so urgent that he felt compelled to do what she said. James's eyes focused on the mass gathering behind him, and even as he looked at the bodies that had caused him so much pain earlier, he noticed them changing as he stared. What he had seen as Diandra and his family was just a group of, still ugly, dead bodies, of people he didn't recognize at all.